Rita Costa and Beatriz Malveiro. Rita is a data visualization engineer with a background in journalism and statistics. Rita's work focuses on creating interactive and accessible visualizations that allow users to engage with the data and gain insights that drive decision-making. Beatriz is a data visualization engineer from Lisbon, currently based in Zurich. She holds a master in applied mathematics from Technical Lisbon and has been working with data visualization across product and research teams. They will be talking about uncovering inequalities, reframing the queer flag to tell data-driven stories.
Thank you. Hi everyone. First, we'd like to thank the organization for what were really inspiring days, and also to you, because they were also very packed days. So thank you for stamina, for staying here and listening to our talk, uncovering inequalities and kind of how we reframe the queer flag to tell a data-driven story. But before, let's start with why we did that. So there are 62 countries in the world where homosexuality is still illegal, and in 8 of them the consequence can be the death penalty. There are 73 where same-sex marriage is still illegal, 107 that do not recognize yet that non-binary identities exist and are valid, and 135 countries with no explicit ban on conversion therapy and its very damaging effects. These are some dark numbers, but just to kind of highlight some of the discriminations that queer people face a bit around the world. But don't get me wrong. We've come a long way since the Stonewall riots. The last 50 years, we've seen a drastic change on public perception of LGBTQ folks. But not all, and with it, legal rights and legislation, and this is an important bit, have been put in place to protect these communities, but not all countries treat their queer communities the same way. And that's the point. How do we tell that story? How do we tell it kind of stepping away from more conventional chart types and tell it in a more emotional and engaging way? And we say, by making use of a symbol that is filled with meaning, the pride flag. And so that's what we'll be talking to you today about our project's Flags of Inequality, one of the winners of the 2022 Pudding Cup. And with it, we hope to motivate you and inspire you to use more symbols and metaphors to tell more engaging data stories. So, hi, I'm Beatriz. I love all things data design and code. I'm, like Marilia said, I'm from Portugal, from Lisbon, but now based in Zurich and part of the team at Interactive Things.
And hi everyone, I am Rita Costa, I am based in Lisbon, I work at FIDSI, and I'm interested in the intersection between art, accessibility, journalism, all coming together to engage with people and communicate. So if you didn't get it by now from what Beatriz just told you, the pride flag is kind of essential to the way we told this story. So let me tell you a bit about how the pride flag came together and what was happening before it did. So in 1969, New York was the epicenter of the fight for queer rights in the US. And in particular, the Stonewall riots kind of kick-started the fights that we have seen throughout the 70s and 80s. And this is the story that the New York Times published the day after the Stonewall riots. So if you look at the title, 4 policemen hurt in a village raid, it doesn't say anything about queer people fighting for their rights at the time. And the year after, the Gay Liberation Front organized the first Gay Liberation March, or what we know today as kind of the first Pride March, and instigated people to go to the streets and fight for their rights. And so the Gay Liberation Marches spread throughout the US in that year, and in 1972 we saw the first Pride March in London. Just for some perspective, the first Pride marches in Portugal happened in the late 90s. So if you think that these things happen slowly, in Portugal, it's even slower. Sorry, I wanted to make a point before. In these first gay liberation marches, people were going to the streets with posters and signs, and kind of what we're used to see today in the demonstrations, kind of on every topic. But they did not have something, a symbol, to unite them all and to bring all of these emotions together. And that happened by the hands of Gilbert Baker, who was commissioned by R.V. Milk and some others to create a symbol that could unite the community and make people come together, a symbol of hope. And so he created what we know today as the pride flag. And these are images of the original pride flag, which at the time had 8 colors. And each of the colors had a meaning, from sex to nature to the love for art and magic and the spirit, and everything combined together to signify hope for a better future. And Gilbert really made use of the flag to tell this story and to make this emotional connection with people and to signify hope and expecting a better future. And I don't know what he thought about all the iterations that the pride flag got, but it now signifies so much more than just the hope for the future. It signifies the diversity of identities within the community. And we see it, so today is such a symbol of the community that we see it used in a variety of ways. We see it used to fight for people's rights, so a young person waving a pride flag in a far-right political rally. We see someone invading a field with a pride flag in hand to ask for equality as well. We see it to showcase support, so every year the Lisbon City Hall hoists a pride flag. We see it when people put it in their balconies to say that, yes, they will vote in the referendum that is asking about same-sex marriage in Switzerland. Or we see it in our online communications when we can use the pride flags to communicate with others and showcase this diversity. And we also see it when companies and brands use it to feed the appetite for queer-branded products, but well. And as data visualization practitioners, we also can think of the pride flag as a stacked bar, and a stacked bar that conveniently fits the data that we have used in flags of inequality.
Yeah, so let's now dive a bit deeper into how exactly we reframe the flag to show the data that we wanted to show. So the data that we use is data from the Rainbow Index, which is a benchmark tool by ILGA Europe. And it's a benchmark on equality laws and protections in 49 European countries. And an important bit about this benchmark is that it categorizes these protections into 6 different categories. And so just like Gilbert Baker, where each flag, where each stripe had a meaning, we kind of take that and map the 6 categories of the data to the 6 stripes of the flag. So let's build our reframed flag. So we start with a big flag canvas. So this is the full area that a flag can take, and then we add the stripes. So we start with purple, that will map to asylum protections. Blue for civil society space, and this basically means the ability for organizations to safely operate, host public events, freedom of expression. In green, we have legal gender recognition and intersex bodily integrity. In yellow, protection against hate crime and hate speech. Orange for the recognition of queer families. This is marriage equality and adoption rights. And finally, in red, the very foundational equality and non-discrimination laws. And so kind of how do we go from here now to the stacked bar chart is that for each country, we will kind of resize the height of each stripe to be proportional to the number of protections in that category that a country covers. So let's see how that looks for a country. Let's start with Malta. Malta ranked number 1 on the index. It's a very full flag. It's a very bright flag. Not completely full, though. You will notice that there's some empty space there at the top. And that is because the red stripe and the green stripe, if you pay attention, are a bit narrower than the other ones. But now if we look at the other side of the spectrum to Azerbaijan, which was 49th in the ranking, it's a barely even visible flag, right? And we're kind of confronted with this big, dark, empty space. And it's important to note here that this absence of color here kind of mimics the absence of rights. And this is kind of the power of flags, right? Flags reflect our hopes and our aspirations. And so that's why we hoist them in buildings, right? That's why we stand behind them in demonstrations. And it's kind of, if we go back to Gilbert Baker and when he said on creating the flag, the pride flag, we needed something to express our joy, our beauty, and our power, and the rainbow did that. And so when we look at a full flag, we see a place where we can aspire to have a full, joyful queer life. But when we see that empty flag, we see that there's still a long road ahead needed to achieve that. And that's kind of a really important part of this metaphor. And so kind of by creating these flags for each of the different countries that are represented in the benchmark, we can see different patterns, and we can compare countries and kind of have this global sense of how do things look for European countries. But we can also see how, for a given country, things have evolved through times. Not that great in Hungary, as you can see. Yeah, and so this is kind of how we got to this project and to this metaphor, and Rita will now tell you a bit of how that happened.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the first iteration of this project was not what you were seeing there. There was some back and forth until we got to the final product. But before showing you those first iterations, let me just say that the spark for this project was when the Rainbow Index released the annual benchmarking tool. Actually, it's done by ILGA Europe, where these 49 countries are ranked based on how protective they are of the LGBTQ+ community in their laws and policies. And so it was 2020, in the midst of the pandemic. The Rainbow Index was released. I had a queer flag on my desk, and I think that the stars aligned, and the first idea or the first iteration of this project came together. Bear in mind, this is done in Python and Outlier, which I was using at the time, so it's a bit rough. But the idea of the flags and the empty flags representing the lack of rights was what I was going for, and this possibility of comparing countries was also something that was already there. But then Bia came into the project, and we did some discussion, and there was some iteration. The idea of the timeline, so we could see how the countries are progressing or not. The idea of the grid, this Hungary timeline where we were testing the idea of the flag that is ripped apart while rights are taken away, but did not come through very well, and so we kind of abandoned it. But yeah, this was kind of the path that we went through to get to the final product. And there was some really important things that we took out of this collaboration and all the brainstormings that we did together that really make flags of inequality, I think, very effective in the message that it is telling. And the first thing is the outer stroke that we have added, the white outer stroke to the flags, that reinforces the ideal flag size and how far or how close the countries are from achieving full equality. Without it, we kind of understand that the flags are not fully drawn, but it's harder to understand. The second one is more functional. It's just making the interface usable by people that are going through it on the mobile version, and we realized that a horizontal timeline was not really working for mobile, and so we rotate the flags and create a vertical timeline. And the last one, and I think it pairs with some of the things that have been was said here in the last sessions, is the scrollytelling introduction. So we are using text and annotations to explain to the reader what are the concepts behind this project and introducing the flag metaphor and its meaning. And
yeah, and so kind of going back to the data and where we came from, we decided to represent this data from the Rainbow Index with the pride flag because we really wanted that kind of emotional connection with the audience. We wanted to hopefully foster LGBTQ advocacy and drive social change. And because we decided to do that, at the same time, we decided not to show other facets and other perspectives of the data. So the original report, and we do want to mention that, has a map where geographical patterns are just much better understood. And if you were curious about which country covers which legal protections, they have a very detailed table that shows you that. And our point here is that knowing what is your intent, why are you creating that chart, and what do you want to communicate, helps you navigate these design decisions of what to include, what to exclude, and how to show things. There's something also important about this Rainbow Index is that it is a benchmark of legal rights and protections. And while it is deeply connected to queer lived experiences in those places, it does not tell the full story. There is sometimes a gap between what is the law and what are social perceptions. And for that, we're going to take the example of Portugal again. So Portugal's actually been on the forefront of progressive legislation of equality laws. It actually dropped a few places in the ranking this year, but it's ranked 9th, right? It's not that bad. You know, marriage equality was written into law in 2010. That's 13 years ago. However, if we now look at data from the Eurobarometer, and this is a survey on people's perceptions, we actually see something a bit different. And this is a survey on countries of the European Union, so that's why there's 28 countries and the Rainbow Index goes all the way down to 49th. And on these surveys, people are asked, do you believe that queer people should have the same rights as heterosexual people, if you're comfortable with seeing 2 women kissing, or if you believe that discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation is widespread in your country. These are just some examples. They do more surveys. But the point here is that there is another side to this story, and that's something that we also wanted to say, is that there are multiple perspectives on queer life and therefore on queer data, right? And this means that there are many stories to be told, and it is important that we tell them, because information and empathy fight ignorance and discrimination. And it is a part that we, as data visualization practitioners, can play to continue the movement forward and to drive for social change. You know, from platforms such as the Equality, which is a collaborative knowledge base that crowdsources LGBT rights a bit all around the globe. It's very objective, it's very detailed. You can really spend a lot of time navigating through all of the data on the platform, to something like Queering the Map, which is a more emotional take. So it's a community-generated counter-mapping tool that basically digitally archives what are queer experiences in relation to the physical space. And you can kind of navigate around the globe and zoom in some cities, and here we're zooming in on the city of Porto, click on each of the counters and read the testimony and really connect and empathize with whoever individual wrote that. So there's many different ways that we can tell stories with data, from more objective things to more empathetic and emotional ways.
Thank you. So, wrapping up, to tell you about metaphors and how useful we believe that they can be, we are by no means the first to use metaphors to tell data visualization stories, and we have seen, for example, the work of Pedro Cruz already here, where he uses metaphors to tell the story of the immigration patterns in the US since the 1850s, I believe. Or we see the work from Mona Chalabi, who unapologetically uses images that are heavily connected to the stories that she's telling to reinforce the points that she's making, or the work by South China Morning Post, where in this example they're using the idea of the blood dripping to tell about deaths in Iraq. And we believe that using metaphors to tell data visualization stories is a really effective way to communicate and engage with people, and to get them to read through the visualization and kind of spark some emotions. And I wanted to finish saying that Gilbert Baker was also using a metaphor of the rainbow as a sign of hope and hope for a better future. Without the work that he did in the past, we wouldn't be able to create flags of inequality. On the other hand, if in 1978 Gilbert Baker was tasked with creating a flag that was proportional to the rights that queer people had at the time, the flag would be practically non-existent. And so our expectancy is that a work like Flags of Inequality doesn't need to exist in the future, because everyone has full rights. So yeah, thank you.
I've actually forgot to tell the audience that you won the Pudding Cup for this work. How was the impact of that? How has it been? Do you think it was, or are you still seeing the impact?
Well, we did not stop sign autographs. No, I'm kidding.
That's good.
No, I'm kidding.
No, but it was really nice, especially, the people at the pudding, they write a small description about each of the projects and why they selected them, and it was really nice to read their perspective on it and like what you created, and that the people understood kind of your intentions, and so that was just really nice.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, we've done more projects now where we were really aiming to kind of try some awards, but this one was not. We were just working together, and then we saw the Pudding Prize, and we went for it. But I think it's important to say that sometimes you also try and you fail. So we've tried for another award, the Information is Beautiful award, and we didn't get it, and we were quite sad. But I think it's important, like, for perspective, that sometimes you will try and you won't get it, and you will be sad, but then you rise up and you try again, and yeah.
Sure. But I think we still want to acknowledge you today that you actually won a prize. So let's take it.
No, absolutely.
Any questions? Yeah. Yeah. It's not.
We have an online question from Luther Koch. How do you reconcile the conflict between the use of queer flag in data visualization and the need to accommodate people with color blindness?
Do you want to try that, Via?
I think we can give an honest answer.
No, yeah, go ahead.
We were the whole point was to kind of keep the original rainbow flag, and I guess I can just divert to Gilbert Baker and ask him why he didn't consider colorblind people. But yeah, maybe, I think that's a very interesting question.
Yeah, we did try to tweak it a bit, so the colors are not like exactly the same colors, but yeah, it's not fully accessible in that perspective.
The red and the green stripe are a bit further apart, so maybe that helps a bit.
Yeah. But also the idea, the categories are important, but the main metaphor here is actually the idea that the flag is either almost full or not, so that idea at least can be conveyed, and yeah.
Hi, thank you very much. Congratulations on the work. It's an amazing project. Being also part of the community and understanding that all of these movements, both feminist movement and the LGBTQIA+ community, in a sense, are new. We know that there's so much diversity inside and so many things that have been discussed that people don't really recognize yet, and there's discussion within the community itself. I was wondering to get like a candid answer from you on how was the reception on the community itself? Because I know that all of these things are very interesting, but there's a whole lot of discussion about the flag and the colors of the flag and how they are used. So how was that, and how did they perceive or did they expect to see that information in that way that's so clear of how much people are actually excluded from some places or not included? So yeah, a little bit of your opinion on that. Thank you.
Maybe I can answer that, because we did not get a huge amount of feedback from the community. Maybe we need to be more pushy and share it in the right channels. But with the first iteration that I've shown, I've actually shared it on Twitter, and then it was retweeted by some other people, and it got to some people in the community. And is this okay? And yeah, no, people were not commenting on the flag per se. People were more commenting on the visual effect that they get and asking stuff like, oh, this specific country is in this position, why is that? And trying to understand from that sense, and not so much about, all the things that the flag entails.
Yeah, but I think it is a fair point, and the flag itself really is evolving and is changing, and we also wanted to communicate that a bit, that now we've got many flags, and we have a much richer and much more inclusive flag, which was not the one that we used to kind of keep the metaphor. But I think it's interesting for us to think in the future if we can kind of continue the work on this, maybe show other perspectives in the data, and see if we can all fit it into a flag metaphor.
Hi, congratulations. I'm like huge fan of the work. Since on the first day the physicalization was such a huge topic, I was wondering if you ever thought about making the flag like physical. I know it'd cost like a lot of money, but I was wondering, for example, would be make a huge impact I don't know, the Portuguese representative on the LGBT march that we have here in Lisbon in Porto. Have you ever considered that?
That is a great question.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we thought about creating a physical version of the flags because the flag is a very physical thing, right? We want to take it to places. And we, I guess, overestimated our ability, our sewing abilities and our abilities to create it. We went together, we got the fabrics, we thought, oh, we can sew, but let's get some like of those iron-on hemming things and try to get the stripes together. But that didn't really work out.
No.
But it's something on our mind and something that's, yeah, we're trying to try other approaches, but yeah.
We do have a rough prototype at my house.
Yes, we do.
And a bunch of fabric, yeah.
Split it between Lisbon and Zurich, actually.
Any other question? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.